Hello and welcome to Release the Creative, your favorite show about creativity, cognition, and this week, the Conqueror and the Communicator.
Conqueror and Communicators.
The only people that matter in history.
So there's more than one person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, they're truly, we'll get into it, but it's truly the only people that matter in history are Conquerors and Communicators.
What about people that make ice cream?
I would say those are Conquerors.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to split hairs on this, but like they conquered the culinary world.
Okay, so we have kind of a broader definition of conqueror. Not just Genghis Khan.
No, I mean, well, Genghis Khan would certainly be a conqueror, but so yeah, no, sorry, brain freeze there.
It's the ice cream.
It's the ice cream. We just mentioned ice cream and my brain froze up. No, so I was thinking about this week. Movies that you've heard about, you've grown up, if you saw a clip of it, you'd instantly know what it was, but you have absolutely not seen it and might not even know what it's about.
It has a long list of movies for me.
It's a long list of movies. I think it's a long list of movies for everyone. Like, I've seen The Graduate. I've seen it a dozen times because I went to film school, but I think most people recognize that one shot with the leg and like Mrs. Robinson under the leg, but I know a lot of people who haven't seen The Graduate. Have you seen The Graduate?
I have, but again, it comes from having a communications degree. I don't think I would have watched it on my own.
Right. So like The Graduate, I think most people recognize that shot, but there's a lot of people that haven't seen it. Have you seen Gone with the Wind?
I have not seen Gone with the Wind.
The Godfather?
I have seen most of The Godfather, but I cannot claim to have seen all of it.
Casablanca?
Definitely not.
Citizen Kane?
That's another one I've seen most of, but haven't gotten to the end of.
Okay. So for the record, I just want to go on the record here saying that every film student has seen Citizen Kane. It's like one of those requirements. I am the only film student. I am one of the very few filmmakers / film students that I've ever met that has watched Citizen Kane multiple times recreationally. Like, I have kicked back and watched Citizen Kane because I enjoy it.
Even though I didn't finish it, I thought it was quite good.
Yeah.
It was a falling asleep problem, not a disinterest.
I will say, like, the first 15 minutes of the first time I watched it, I was like, oh my gosh, this movie is just cliche after cliche, and stopped myself. I was like, wait, no, it's not. Like, it's just been copied so many times.
Where the cliche came from.
You know, and so like the coolest story about Orson Welles, and I'd like to think that other than the raging alcoholic and a spouse abuser, he and I would have been like buddies from just a...
If you can overlook a couple of things.
Yeah, you know, like if you can overlook the terrible human being fact, which I'll get to that in a second. I've learned that basically everyone in history was a terrible human being.
Turns out true.
yeah, basically. Yeah. So one of my favorite stories from Citizen Kane is not important to this conversation at all, but I just want to say it is that he was telling me that he wanted a low angle shot. So they put it on the lower sticks or tripod and they shot him. He's like, no, I said low, get it low. And so they took it off the sticks and they put it on a sandbag on the ground. And he said, no, so they took out the sandbag and put it on a blanket. And he's just getting really angry, and he walks over to the wall and he pulls off the fire axe and walks over and chops through the studio floor till he can see dirt under the studio floor. He says, start digging, I'll tell you when to stop. And I'm like, yeah, man. Like, and I will say that Citizen Kane broke all sorts of rules. First off, for those who don't know, it was Orson Welles flipping the middle finger to William Randolph Hearst. Like you do. Who was the biggest media mogul titan like Joseph Pulitzer, William Randolph Hearst, and I'm out. Like those, and for the record, that was the Times and the Los Angeles. Like,
yeah.
Who were they? Massive communicators. Why do we know Joseph Pulitzer? Well, other than the Pulitzer Prize, massive communicator. William Randolph Hearst, massive, owned newspapers, huge communicator. Orson Welles, why do we know? Because he is a 24-year-old, like, put his middle finger in the air to some of the biggest moguls. No money, no thing. And so in a lot of ways, all three of these men were kind of, like I was saying earlier, like conquerors and communicators. But I don't want to spoil that idea. So other movies what would be the oldest, most classic movie you have seen?
Probably The Wizard of Oz.
Good answer.
Pretty, everyone I feel has seen that at some point. Although there's exceptions, aren't there?
You know, I would tell you no, that there are no exceptions, but I meet people every once in a while that still haven't seen Star Wars, and
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm cheating with that answer. Outside of that, I don't know the specific answer. I've seen a variety of the World War II movies that were made in the 1950s.
Oh, sure.
But like, I couldn't tell you what they were.
You know, and much like, and this might, I'm going to offend someone with this one. All of those 1950s war movies, I feel, are much like the 1960s Westerns. They kind of don't count.
They're a genre.
They're a genre, right? I mean, they're all important while none of like, yeah, sure, yes, there are some importance. They are certainly a historical genre. They were made and they are a pinnacle point in history, but I don't know that any of them really stand. I mean, like, I love The Outlaw Josie Wales as much as the next guy, but I've been told that that's not even the best Clint Eastwood spaghetti western. So what do I know?
Yeah.
But it's interesting. We have all these movies going back to The Godfather, which I have seen, but again, I have The Godfather like you have Citizen Kane. I saw it once. It was a long time ago. I didn't dislike it, but it has hype that I don't share.
I think I've seen every part of it, but not in order.
That's kind of
so I can't.
I know that I sat down and watched it once, and I've seen every scene 1,000 times. Casablanca, I've seen a dozen times. But there's all these moments, these really pinnacle moments in our pop culture lexicon that are shared moments. And that's so funny because a lot of them aren't. They aren't actually shared. Like Casablanca, and it even gets to the point of play it again, Sam. Never said in the movie, Luke, I am your father. Not in the movie.
And here's your Star Trek one. No one ever said, beam me up, Scotty.
Does he really never say, beam me up, Scotty?
No, you have, beam us up or beam me up or Mr. Scott, beam us up. So there's a million varieties of it, but the actual phrase, beam me up, Scotty, never appears in Star Trek.
That almost seems hard to believe. It's such there's only so many ways you can put those words. But we have these cultural icons, these cultural touchstones. And funny is that a lot of them aren't real. They are cultural and they're societal, but they are shared moments in our collective Mandela effect consciousness. We're not getting into the Mandela effect on this episode, but we should, for the record. But yeah, but then you get to the more modern, the pop culture movies, and it seems that more people have seen them, but I don't know. So you've seen all of the, I imagine you've seen all of the Brat Pack, like the Pretty in Pink.
Not.
No?
No.
None of the John Hughes movies? What's wrong with you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've seen
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
Okay.
But no, I missed a lot of, see, you had older siblings.
You are the oldest. That's
I am the oldest both of my siblings and my cousins. That's
true. You are the firstborn of your whole, see, I'm the youngest.
Yeah, so you got a lot of that Gen X stuff from older siblings, and I was I'm more of a 90s child.
That's interesting because you're older than me.
Yeah,
you're older than me, but I was raised by my 3 older brothers, so I have a true foot in Gen X, of which I am not. I'm actually a millennial, and you're actually Gen X.
Yeah,
but
my earliest memories are watching Back to the Future in 1990. I remember when Back to the Future 3 came out is when I was like, oh, this is a thing, and I went and watched all of them. So I kind of 1988, 89 was when I started getting into pop culture, and then I dipped back to Ghostbusters and Indiana Jones. Sure. There's a few things I brought with me, but no, I didn't experience the 80s in real time.
What is the first movie you remember seeing in the theater? Do you have an answer?
I think it was the long forgotten Disney film Oliver and Company about a cat. Yeah, nobody remembers that one, but yeah. I think I saw, when was that? Was probably 4 or 5 years old. That's the first one I remember.
Oh wow, yours is way younger than mine. So I was 8, and I remember I'm sure I'd seen a movie earlier in the theater, but my first distinct memory, I was living in Puyallup, Washington, which is a suburb of Tacoma, which is a suburb of Seattle. So it's about 45 minutes away from Seattle. And I was living in Puyallup, Washington, and I went and saw, and I remember this feeling of, we went in and it was light outside, and we came out, it was dark, and I'm like, whoa, how long were we in there?
That's a great feeling.
Yeah. And it was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, 1989.
Nice.
And I remember the guy melting, and I'm 8, 7 and a half, 8, because I was born in 82, so, do the math. And I remember loving it, but so 80s movies, no John Hughes films.
Well, Home Alone, of course.
Well, that's a John Hughes film, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's later though. That's 1990.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying is that's kind of when I was getting into pop culture, and then at that point, I was interested in Ghostbusters and Indiana Jones,
which are 4 and 5 and 6 years later.
I was saying, like, the Breakfast Club isn't something that like a 9-year-old was gonna be like, oh, that's awesome, like
that's true.
Without someone to show it to me, it didn't pop up as a thing that I.
So I'm trying to think of like classic 80s cinemas. Obviously, we've gone through. You said you've seen the Ghostbusters because
I eventually got through
Indiana Jones,
most of them. I'm trying to think where my.
Well, I mean, the third one just came out. What about Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure?
Okay, so that's a hole for me because I didn't see them at all as a child. And I think I must have seen the first one when I was about 20, like right before college, like late high school. I saw Bill. So both Bill and Ted and Top Gun are two that I didn't see young enough.
I'm sorry.
I saw Top Gun.
In your 20s?
Yeah, like in college, like 21 or 22. And
that was my Saturday morning Underoos show.
Both Top Gun and Bill and Ted were ones that I think like you had to hit them at a certain age that I missed. Goonies is another one. All three of those I saw as a mostly adult. And like I was like, this is fine, but I don't have that nostalgia factor. So I view Bill and Ted, Goonies, Top Gun, I think I view all of those the way boomers do, which is kind of like, oh, it's something for young people, or I don't have this like affinity for any of those movies, even though I recognize they're just as good as the other movies that I do love.
Like, I will be honest, there's literally a joke and footnote in my book about Bill and Ted. Like it was so integral to my upbringing.
I know most people my age have that relationship with it, and I missed it.
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and then of course the follow-up opus, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. And you've seen.
I've definitely seen none of that. I know the first one's the only one I've even seen once.
Okay, we need to talk about this when we come back.
All right, we're gonna hit our break, and we will be back in just a minute.
Cool. Hey, Jeff and I wanted to take a minute just here at the top of the show to say thank you for joining us on our new podcast and YouTube show, Release the Creative. Whether you're new to our brand of crazy or you followed us over from one of our other social media platforms, LinkedIn, Twitch, Facebook, or Twitter, we'd like to thank you for joining us here. Please take this moment to hit the subscribe and the like button, and also that funny little notification button so that you can be notified of all our new episodes. We're really trying to get this new show up on the road. Thank you so much for watching.
All right, and we are back to the Bill and Ted podcast. Apparently.
Yeah, no, I mean it's not the Bill and Ted's podcast. It is, again, this episode's called The Communicator and the Conqueror, the Conqueror and the Communicator. And what's really funny is that Bill and Ted plays into this. I can make this about Bill and Ted.
Make anything about Bill and Ted.
I probably could. Like, all roads lead to Rome, all roads lead to Bill and Ted. And for the record, this is in no way associated with the fact that the third one just came out, which I have not seen yet, despite the fact that it has been like haunting me, like now available, streaming now, bye.
Like 2 weeks, yeah.
Right, but so my kids, who are, well, 3 of them are home, but my oldest, my 11 and my 13-year-old, they're at their nannies, their grandma's this week, and I want to indoctrinate them with the first 2, and then we'll watch the third together.
You got to catch it. Yeah, I've run into that problem.
And so, like, this whole week, it's like, it's here. I could buy it and watch it right now. But, like, I want to have this moment with my daughters. So the plot line of Bill and Ted's, I'm sorry that I have to catch, like, you all have to listen while I catch him up, but just in case there's other people that for some reason haven't.
There's going to be somebody who hasn't seen that movie.
So Rufus comes from the future and says, you two are the great ones in our society. You are the pinnacles of our society, and it all hinges on you passing high school, which you're about to fail out of, because they have this report on history due. And so if you don't pass high school, then everything crumbles. So I'm here to give you a time machine so that you can go back and save history so that you still end up being the great ones. I understand that I butchered that, but Jeff doesn't care. Anyway.
I know the setup.
So they end up going back into, so the history report, they have to do a live presentation like on Friday. So they decide, Bill, let's go back in time and collect great people from history and have them come and do the presentation. Whoa, heinous! And that's the entire plot, is they go back into these different plots of time and they bring back people. So people they bring back: Joan of Arc, Billy the Kid, Abraham Lincoln, Genghis Khan, Socrates, Sigmund Freud, Mozart or Bach.
I believe
no, it's Beethoven.
Beethoven. It's
Beethoven. It's Beethoven. I might be missing one.
It was a pretty comprehensive list.
But I'd like to point out there, every single one of those was either a conqueror or a communicator.
All right, let's go down the list. What was the first one?
Abraham Lincoln. If you want to argue, you can split hairs here. You could argue that he's both. So he was the president over the Civil War. I don't want to get split hairs on what conquering means, but still. And communicator, everything from the Gettysburg Address to, I mean, he was a lawyer and an orator. He's one of the presidents whose writings we, very much still have.
Solidly in one or the other or both. Yeah.
Like, I mean, you could argue that he was conqueror, communicator, and Genghis Khan. Please, definition. Like Alexander the Great and Genghis Khan probably tied for greatest conquerors in history.
Yeah.
Billy the Kid. Now, this one I will admit you have to cross your eyes a little bit on.
The original thing you said was everyone who matters in history.
Yeah.
No offense to Billy the Kid, but in a way, he's a bit of a story.
He's a story. He's a tall tale.
He's a tall tale, even though, real people can be tall tales. But
sure.
In a sense, and what we're describing as air quotes matters, I would put him outside of that circle. So I don't think you need to justify him as a conqueror or a communicator.
That's fair. So he's the tall tale. I appreciate that. Joan of Arc, conqueror, clearly. Socrates, communicator. Now, even though all the things that we have very little of his writings, everything he was said, which was clearly very profound and effective, and paradigm shifting, was written down by his student, Plato, of which he wrote down everything, man. He was Alexander Hamilton, 3,000 years earlier, scribbling down everything. There's this guy named Alfred North Whitehead, more contemporarily, who said that basically all of Western culture is in some way a footnote to Plato, which sounds glib, but it's actually kind of true when you really dig into what Plato did. Anyway, but that's not the point. So when you dig into people that matter in history, they did one of two things: built an empire of some kind, or changed the way we thought with the way they communicated. So Leonardo da Vinci, artist, painter, sculptor, inventor, engineer, but it kind of only matters because he was able to articulate it and write it. And there's been other people who might have been just as brilliant, but if they didn't have the skill to communicate it,
it's interesting. The phrase is the pen is mightier than the sword.
Sure.
But whether or not you come down on one side or the other of that, the phrase has set up the proposition that it's the only two things in contention.
You know what? I'm dead serious. I had never thought of it like that. We say the pen is mightier than the sword, but those are the only two things on the list.
Yeah, even if you argue it, you're just arguing to flip them.
Yeah. And so then you have people and so what's really interesting to that exact thing, so, obviously the hit musical that everyone's heard of since 2015-16, Hamilton, and it goes very deeply into the relationship between George Washington, one of the greatest conquerors in our contemporary, air quotes, contemporary history, and Alexander Hamilton, who he was a little bit of a general, but mostly prolific communicator.
Yes.
And what's really interesting is, almost everything said or sung by George Washington was actually said by Alexander Hamilton.
In the first place.
In the first place. But what I want to emphasize here is that you don't get to be a general like George Washington without the ability to communicate to your troops. People don't follow you if they don't understand what you're doing. People don't, mutiny's a thing.
So these things are intertwined.
Right, so the pen is mightier than the sword, but the sword kind of relies on the pen unless you're talking one-on-one battle, which you aren't almost ever.
But not for this, yeah.
And I will say that, George Washington lost as many, if not more, battles than he won, but George Washington, they say, out-espionaged. George Washington, his conquering was through communication. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't have any information on Genghis Khan or Alexander the Great, but I will have to say that Genghis Khan and Alexander the Great would have had to have been in some way able to rally and inspire and command troops to have been that prolific of a conqueror. So pen or the sword doesn't matter. It always comes back to the pen somehow. You have to be able to communicate, or your troops don't know what you need. They don't know what they're doing. So even though this episode and the concept is the pen or the sword, the commander or the conqueror, the communicator or the conqueror, it's just communication 100% of the time. It just depends on whether you're trying to incite a riot with words or incite troops to cause a riot with words.
So I want to know, we're going to take our break.
Okay.
And when we come back, I want to know how people can apply this to their lives.
Absolutely.
We'll be right back. All right, so communicators or conquerors.
Right.
These are the people that make a mark on history or
Right.
the world. So what can we learn from that?
So I'm going to tag him in the comments when I post this, because he and I are friends on social media. So Mike Long, he was my professor or my lecturer of writing at Georgetown when I was going through and taking my writing class, and he said it really, really well, and it kind of like sunk in. It's like, there is no profession, period. There is no job, period. There is no form of anything that doesn't benefit by you being a better writer. Now, he was a writing teacher. I'm going to change that slightly to saying by being a better communicator.
Yeah.
You being able to be clear in your intentions, clear in your desires, clear in your designs, and clear in what you want other people to do. Whether you are a postman to a president, it doesn't matter. Your ability to take, internalize, and express information, either written, oral, or text these days, it doesn't matter. There is nothing that isn't affected by your ability to understand and internalize and externalize communication. I'm trying to think of an exception. I guess if you're a hermit, but I mean, there's not much money in hermiting these days.
I will have to look into that.
Like, I mean, are they hiring being a hermit? I don't know.
I think it's more of a freelance gig.
It's a freelance gig. But, you know, even all the way down to just stay-at-home dad, stay-at-home mom, the ability to communicate to your children and understand what they are needing and wanting, up to being a manager, middle manager, corporate manager, CEO, visionary, up to literally world leader, conqueror, president of the UN. When you get into these really high politicians, maybe or not, whether or not it's propaganda doesn't matter. It still hinges on their ability to communicate their passion. And this has gone for tyrants. Like, I don't want to start dropping names of tyrants, but like every tyrant you can name got there by being charismatic and ability to inspire people to follow them, even towards horrible things.
So it seems to me that all of this is, I mean, we're all stuck in our heads.
Absolutely.
And it's the brain in the jar problem. You know,
Yes.
if you don't get anything to other people,
Right.
nothing is affected. And that's
Right.
kind of what you're getting at here is when we say communication, we think, oh, I wrote a story, I made
Right.
a movie. But really, communication is how humans function.
Right.
You're either one human or you're a whole society.
Right.
And for society to work, there's communication.
Well, I mean, I take Albert Einstein or Stephen Hawking more aptly. These amazing minds. They were they were not communicators. They weren't PR. They weren't writers, and they weren't conquerors. Unless you want to get really philosophical on what I mean by conquering. But yes, they were, because like Stephen Hawking, let's use him. You know, he lost his ability to speak. I'm going to get this wrong. 20, 30 years ago, like my whole life.
More than that. Yeah.
Yeah. But he was still, you know, through the use of modern technology and things, he was still trying and making sure that he found ways to communicate his new ideas and his new foundations and his new things. Imagine if he hadn't. Imagine if 30 years ago, when he lost the ability to speak, it was done. Like Stephen Hawking was Stephen Hawking 100 years earlier, where he couldn't scribble things down and he was completely locked in an inability to communicate. It ends there. But what made his contribution continue all the way up to his death somewhat recently was his ability to communicate that. So the real goal is, you know, you sitting in the boardroom, scribbling your ideas down, saying like, oh man, they're doing this all wrong. No, you are. You are doing it all wrong. You have an idea.
So at a certain point, it's not even a matter of how best to communicate.
You have to communicate.
The first step is it's about putting yourself out there at all.
Like, I mean, I've got an idea. Shut up. Okay. Like, if you are keeping your best ideas to yourself, you're already wrong. Like, you can't learn and grow. No one else can learn or grow. Nothing is benefited by you keeping your brilliance to yourself. There are people that can't communicate and they've figured out new ways. There are people that need to communicate more and have chosen not to. The communicator, the conqueror, the physicist, Leonardo da Vinci, I almost said Leonardo DiCaprio, like, it doesn't matter. Contributions, whether they be philosophical, philanthropic, physicists, all the way through the emperors, your contribution is limited to your ability to communicate it 100% of the time. So if you are, sitting in your cubicle annoyed that your projects aren't getting done correctly, or annoyed that things aren't being done the right way, you keeping your ideas to yourself is 98% of the time the wrong answer.
You're approaching this from a speak up for yourself perspective, but there's a good lesson there for those of us who manage other people, is to try to cultivate this attitude, or this make it easy for people to speak up and
Sure.
and ask people, because I've been in that situation where you have a team of people and you notice 2 people are giving you all the ideas.
Right.
It doesn't mean the rest of them don't have ideas.
Right. And everyone, I want to go way off on the rail, but people think differently. Like, we've had a partner contractor, not a partner, but a contractor that we've worked with here that I found I needed to give them the idea, talk to them, write them an email, and then give them 3 days and follow up, because they were a deep thought internalizer, and that I'm a million-mile-an-hour guy, and if I didn't stop and circle back with them, I was losing the sheer power of their brilliance. I was losing the opportunity to let them be amazing by being like, well, they didn't speak up, so, and that's on me.
Yeah.
Sort of. It's a little bit on that.
Well, even between you and me, I know the way to allow Kirk to have an idea is to sit in front of him and say, talk for 2 hours.
That does not make me sound good at all.
Over those 2 hours, he's going to, you've heard of brainstorming. Kirk brainstorms out loud, and that's how you operate.
Yeah.
And what I was saying, when I'm the opposite, is that throughout that brainstorm, I will listen, and then I'm the one that'll come back to you tomorrow and be like, oh, here's 6 more ideas I had last night.
Well, and I've told you very directly, everything I've ever thought of in my life that I am proud of came from you telling me an idea was stupid and that I needed to figure out a better way to explain it. Like, you're like, Kirk, I have no idea what you're talking about. That makes no sense. Make it sound like less insane. I'm like, so I had to literally sit for hours and figure out how to make it sound less Kirk. How would Jeff say this? And that's where I find the ability to externalize the brainstorm. And when I say that, I mean quite literally the storm inside my brain.
I'm a filter. And I want to be clear. I don't say your ideas are stupid. I say they're nonsensical.
I'm not sure that's better.
No, I say there's definitely, this is where we always end up, is there was something good in there. I don't get it.
I don't get it. No, and it would be, I've had that my entire life. I've come to teachers and bosses and parents and girlfriends' parents and my future in-laws and my current in-laws and said, here's the idea. What do you think? And they'll be like, what? And it would have been really easy if 10 years ago I'd have just said, man, nobody gets me. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. But I that wouldn't have benefited me. And I know that it wouldn't have benefited the people that I have gone on to work with and help. And nothing is benefited from you keeping your mouth shut. 98% of the time. There is a 2% like, dude, just bite your tongue, walk away. When I was first writing our employee handbook 5 years ago, I was trying to make this sense. And I wrote this thing that you've heard 100 times now, but I've found that it works really, really well with project management. And it's the 3 rules of every project. It's collaborate, cooperate, and laugh. And that means this. The first step is collaborate. If I'm doing something stupid and you don't tell me, that's on you. Like, your job, I didn't hire you to do what I said. I hired you to tell me what to do. Yeah. Like, if I'm doing something crazy or you don't understand what I'm doing, you have to say something, because I'm not right all the time. You're smarter than me almost every time. Collaborate. You've got to help. Second, cooperate. At some point, someone has to make the decision. And if I've heard your ideas and I've listened, everything, at some point has to be responsible for the end. So when someone says, okay, this is the way forward, the time for collaboration is done. Now cooperate with the decision and be a part of the team. And at the end, if everyone collaborated and felt listened to, and everyone cooperated and was helping push the wagon forward, then everyone can go home, have a beer, and laugh. Because even though their idea wasn't picked, they were listened to and they felt like they were a part of the team, and everyone succeeded or failed together. And that is how every project should work, but it depends on talking.
Yeah, your whole philosophy there is, I think, good, but it also describes the way you operate. Like that's who you are.
Yeah.
I've had people in the past who have only met you once or didn't know you yet say, well, what's it like to work with
Terrified of that answer.
And I always tell them, I say, well, a lot of people love Kirk and some people hate him. And I said, I'll tell you what the people who hate him get wrong. I said, Kirk will push back on everything.
It's true.
But he's a good soldier. So he will argue with you until you say, well, it's my decision, we're doing it this way. And then he is 100% on board with your plan. And I said, the people who don't like Kirk don't understand that. They don't understand that Kirk pushing back, they think it means that he doesn't like their idea or he doesn't like them. And that's not the case at all. It's just that you explore everything.
Yeah. How do we know there isn't room over on this? Like, how do we know? Yeah, no, you have to talk. You have to talk it out.
If you are smart enough to explore that with you, people love working with you. But that's a skill some people don't have, where they think, oh, if someone has talked back to me, it means they're being disobedient. And you don't play well with those people.
I do not play well with those people.
And to be fair, like it's not necessarily worth playing with those people because it's not productive.
There are absolutely my way or the highway people, and I will tell you, I'm not saying they don't exist, but I will tell you that I have never met a my way or the highway person worth working with.
No, yeah, I would agree with that. It's a, well, maybe if there's one project I can do it your way, but then I'm going to hit the highway. When you say my way or the highway, that's a choice, and I'm going to make a choice eventually.
I will take this job, and when this job is done, I will leave. But like, the best teams are, when you talk about like special forces units in the military, they are rankless. Not really. There's a captain, there's a sergeant, but they're rankless. Like the sergeant doesn't feel belittled by the captain because like they're a team. And if the sergeant says, hey, Captain XYZ, like they listen to each other. You have to collaborate. You have to be willing to listen to every member of your team. You have to cooperate when it's your time to push. And that's what lets you laugh, because this stuff is fun. But back to just the core point, Commander, Conqueror, Communicator, it all comes down to your ability to collaborate and cooperate, your ability to talk and your ability to get your ideas out, because nothing is benefited at all by you keeping your ideas to yourself. No one grows from you not participating.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. That's the Wayne Gretzky.
That
applies to ideas too.
Absolutely.
So that's going to wrap it up for this week, and we will be back next week with Release the Creative.
Awesome. See you guys.
Thanks for joining us here at Release the Creative. Kirk here would never say it to your face, but he thinks you should like and subscribe to us on YouTube.
And Jeff is far too shy to admit it, but he thinks you should subscribe to us on your favorite podcast reader.
Yeah? Well, you're the one who's always saying that everyone should give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
Why do you have to make everything so difficult?